This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, a lot of CM Punk news. Is he coming back to AEW? Is he not? What's going to happen? Is AEW going to resort to some WWE tactics? You're going to want to stick around for the news and notes segment to find out about all of that. Of course, we're going to break down what took place this week in wrestling. AEW had some good stuff. WWE had some stuff. We're not going to call it good. We're just going to say they had some stuff. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I are in the same boat. WWE, in terms of programming, to me, in my notes, it just kind of felt like they had two house shows. If they didn't have broadcasters, if they really didn't have the movement toward a pay-per-view, you could argue that if you just turned down the sound, they just had matches. They had stuff going on. Obviously, some things moved along storylines. But when you have travel issues out west, it was very fascinating to see how that show on Raw was put together. But yeah, WWE, kind of the best word that I wrote in my notes, they had a mundane week. And it was really weird to kind of go through it this week, but it was just kind of there, and we can talk about it. But yeah, it was mundane. AEW, I think, had the opportunity to pick up the ball, and they put on a slightly better show than they've been putting on over the last couple weeks. So I'm excited to break it all down.
Yeah, I think if you watched any WWE programming this week, I think you didn't have to. And I think that's probably the biggest indictment on what we were given this week from WWE. If you watched Monday Night Raw, if you watched SmackDown, I don't think you missed anything if you didn't watch them. If you took them in, it was just programming. It really felt like it was all filler. With SmackDown specifically, generally when I sit down to watch these shows, I'm like, okay, what can I take out for us to talk about? I don't have anything for us to talk about SmackDown. You might have something, but I don't. On our rundown, I didn't put anything for SmackDown. Now, with Raw, there were a couple of things, and I'll be honest with you, I was stretching to find material for our show, and that kind of led me to what was your reaction with the Trish heel turn on Becky? Because to me, this was one of the more poorly orchestrated things on Monday night. This was one of the things I think I had the biggest issue with on Monday night. I felt like this was incredibly rushed. We all knew this was coming. We have talked about this for weeks now. But it really felt like they rushed it. If you watch the video package that they showed on SmackDown, it really feels like Becky should be the one turning on Trish, because Trish was the one that got rolled up. Trish was the one that lost the title. It wasn't Becky. Becky was hugging her saying, it's okay, we'll figure it out, we'll get him back again. And then Trish turns on her, and it was a sloppy heel turn by Trish. It felt like it was a blow that missed its mark. It felt like it was all really poorly done. And again, the build for this story really hasn't been there. I think this is maybe the third time them two have been on TV, including the pay-per-view. So it really didn't make sense to me to put it where they put it and to do it right now. If you were to do this in a couple of weeks and there was a little bit of, a little bit of distrust built up, if it turns out that it's been alluded to that Trish was the one that attacked Lita, because that was how these two ended up going into this tag match where they lost the tag team belts. If it turned out Trish was the one who attacked Lita, and I think that's probably what it'll be eventually, but if there was alluded to that and we kind of had some suspicion and we had some speculation, and then you got the big heel turn, I think it would have been better. But to me, this just felt rushed. It felt like they threw paint against the wall and like seeing if it stuck, it stuck. If it didn't, it didn't. What was your reaction to this? Because to me, this really turned me off. And this was a storyline I think they could have really did some good stuff with. But it just felt like it was just given to us with very little thought put into it.
Yeah, cookie cutter. And it played into, obviously, if you've watched anything on A&E, the rivalry between Lita and Trish. It obviously is a way in which you push and move the likes of Becky Lynch over. I get it. It's using the past to bridge it into the future. Just not hitting my radar all that much because, yeah, it's very predictable. the crowd kind of see. Here's the thing: when you move through a lot of storylines and you don't do a lot of like informational background, talking about the history and the feud, detail, you do it in the ring. And the crowd's kind of like, huh? And you just move on, like, to the next segment. And it didn't have the impact. And I guess that's the best way to put it. The heel turn didn't do, in my mind, what it could have set out to do had you did it differently. And for me, in general, women's division wrestling in both companies just hasn't done enough to grab you in to garner interest. Becky Lynch, I think, has stagnated. I think you could make her a bigger star than she actually is. But because she's gone so flamboyant and been so eccentric, I think it takes away from her in-ring stuff. Dude, you can showcase her just as a strong, tough-ass challenger, tough-ass opponent. And you've done it in a way where you've made her like this, effervescent peacock that just needs to show up in glasses and things like that. But I liked her original character as the last kicker. You know what I mean? Someone that can just go in there, handle business, be a tough person. But I think sometimes, and it's interesting to talk about, when WWE transitions to make a wrestler into a sports entertainer, it sometimes just turns people off. Like, some people are just naturally good wrestlers, and you don't have to dial Becky Lynch all the way up to a 12 like a Seth Rollins, because when you have a great wrestler and you dial a great personality like him, that is superstardom. With Becky, I think when you've dialed her up, you've kind of taken away from some things that make her really special. So I'm not interested all that much. I'm actually, it was interesting you said you were struggling a little bit with topics. The biggest topic I think that comes out of this week on SmackDown is Shinsuke and LA Knight. A couple guys that you say, hey, maybe some unmolded clay that maybe WWE, if they get it right, can do some good things. Yeah, but absolutely. I just think that the women in WWE, for some reason, they're in this weird pattern where they have ideas, but they're not just hitting their sweet spot in terms of execution.
Yeah, it really does feel like it's some swinging and missing. And look, WWE was up against it. You touched on it a little bit. They had some travel issues. A lot of the talent lives in Florida, especially that Fort Lauderdale area. And they were just hit by waves and waves of rain, and they had a ton of flooding. The airport was flooded, so they couldn't get they couldn't get airplanes, and they couldn't get travel arrangements made to get them out of Florida all the way to Seattle. So there was a lot of delays there. So it's understandable, and I'll be honest with you, when I found out there were travel delays, I was like, all right, cool. It's going to force WWE to give us good shows. It's going to put their backs against the wall, and usually when this happens, we get really good shows because all of the weird, cheesy segments, they've got to scrap them because the talent's not there. So it's match, 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 match. Here's a little vignette or a segment in the back, match, 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 and they're all pretty good because it's all hands on deck. It really did not feel like that this week. It just didn't. On Monday Night Raw, we had Cody challenge Brock at Backlash. This feels a little bit soon to me. I really wish we would. Again, I'm looking for more story development is what I'm looking for from WWE. You touched on it with Shinsuke and LA Knight. We need story development. Like those guys, unmolded clay is a great word that you use to describe those guys that you've seen on SmackDown. We need that unmolded clay to get some hands in it, get some finger work done with it, and really help build it up, turn it into something. Give me something. This Cody Brock feud, Cody came out, cut a really good promo. Cody does a great job cutting promos. We don't necessarily know Brock's intentions here. And Cody instantly challenges him at Backlash. Like I need to hear the other side of the story for us to get the Backlash. You know what I'm saying? And look, I know Brock is going to come onto Monday Night Raw this week, and he's going to answer this challenge, and we all know he'll answer it, yes. But I really wish that as far as storytelling purposes go, there was a little bit more of a development to this. Like Cody comes out, cuts a promo. I don't know if Brock wants to come out and Brock wants to interrupt, and he can cut his promo and just kind of explain, lay out. Like it would be interesting to me if there was some type of Paul Heyman angle here where Paul promised him to basically pull back the you can never challenge Roman Reigns again stipulation and allow Brock to have at least one more go at the undisputed Universal title. That would be interesting to me. That might be the case. We might get that this week, but we don't have it this week, and we don't have it when Cody's challenging him to Backlash. So we don't know necessarily what Brock's intentions were. I really feel like Brock took out Cody. I feel like we really needed to figure out why Brock took out Cody, not necessarily have Cody come out, cut another A-plus promo, and then say, I want to challenge you at Backlash. Does this feel too soon to you? Does this feel like it's just a little bit out of order as far as the creative goes, or are you cool with this?
I am cool with it. Yeah, I can understand the sequential placement of a feud like this, but you got to look at it and you say, okay, WrestleMania Backlash, they got to put on something that is going to be very intriguing to this new audience that they want to kind of bring back in the Puerto Rican audience. So what better way than to have Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes? It just has to be a feud that elevates Cody Rhodes, and I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be something where, okay, you've thrown this challenge in my way, I'm going to destroy somebody that has a vendetta against me. And I think you're absolutely right. What will set the tone will be how Brock Lesnar delivers his message on Monday. It has to be succinct, it has to be impactful, and it has to be serious in the ability to sell this angle, because really in the end, you're still having a problem, in my mind, selling the audience that they want to see this. I think you went so far back with Cody that people are talking about so many other things than Cody Rhodes in the ring right now. They're talking about wasted opportunities. Is this a flop? Is this something that Cody Rhodes should have accepted and been a part of? Is he now going back? People even talking about him going back to AEW in a stupid way. People thought that his promo was going to be indicating he was going to retire. That's how stupid and twisted this went. Instead of talking about him being a legendary figure and moving forward with the feud. Like I said, this feud would have been just tremendous for the title. I mean, oh my God, Brock Lesnar coming in and you could actually make it believable that Brock could take the title in Puerto Rico. Now it's just a match that you say, okay, how does it play out? It's basically a fantasy match. Hey, Brock Lesnar, Cody Rhodes in the ring, Puerto Rico. It'll be nice to see, but storyline-wise, it's not something that I think is integral to the movement of what everybody wants. Is how the hell do we get Cody Rhodes back on track to any kind of level close to where he had at WrestleMania?
Yeah, and I think you're right, because a couple of weeks ago, it was all Cody all the time. Like, Cody was top of mind. Like, if there was a Cody Rhodes segment, you stopped everything you're doing to tune in. And right now, this was the problem with the decision they made at WrestleMania. Cody felt special. Cody felt like the one. And now Cody just kind of feels like a guy. And I think that's probably the biggest damning point about everything that took place with WrestleMania and Cody not winning. And look, I understand that there's a bigger story here, and I understand that it could be really good. But what you will never sell me is that Cody Rhodes will be as over as he was 2 weeks ago when WrestleMania was going on. You will never sell me, or was it a week ago? You'll never sell me that Cody Rhodes will be ever as big as he was. And it was more of a moment and more of an opportunity for him to grab the belt than it was at WrestleMania 39. It really feel like that was totally misplayed, and it feels like Cody Rhodes will never be to that level ever again, because it was meteoric. It was an awesome rise. It was absolutely fantastic. I do want to touch on something you said with Unmolded Clay. Now, I was watching the Shinsuke match. I was watching the LA Knight match, and I was watching Shinsuke, and I was like, man, he used to be such a badass in New Japan. Like, he was great in New Japan. Now he wrestles, and I'm just kind of like, all right. I mean, he's taking on a super mid card guy. I don't know. The match was, I think, 5 minutes. It wasn't very long. LA Knight, I think, has a great look, and he's got a great promo. And why he hasn't got more traction and why they haven't pushed him more, I don't know. But I do feel like you're right. Those two guys specifically, if you're looking for either a new character or you're looking to reintroduce a character, those two guys should get the full backing and should get a bit of a rocket ship attached to them and give them a monster push. Nakamura, for as poorly as he has been booked and for as long as he has been away, he is still over with the fans. His music hits and the crowd just erupts. It goes bonkers. You know, it's not to the level that it was when it was in NXT, and it's not to the level that it was when he debuted on Monday Night Raw. But it is absolutely insane when he comes out still. And an LA Knight, again, I don't know if there's a guy who's got more tools, and they just tend to give him crap. It just doesn't make sense to me. Where would you like to see them go with both of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see LA Knight to kind of come up where he has kind of forced his way to be over. Now, people are still arguing online that, man, this guy's over and he still takes losses week after week. And Shinsuke, it is weird because he's an attraction, obviously, but he's older now. I think that they had the run, and it kind of goes back to you had the dream match with AJ Styles, and for whatever reason, it just didn't hit that exact mark that they did in Japan. The problem with this situation, harkening back to what I said about Becky, is maybe Shinsuke does need a little bit of more of that. Like, dude's violent, dude's aggressive, and he does need kind of a little bit more dialing up of his personality. Unfortunately, he doesn't speak the best English, and he's obviously over from his time in Japan. He needs a mouthpiece, and he needs a significant feud. Maybe with the Brawling Brutes. Maybe he comes in and says, I've been watching this. I think something with Sheamus would be great for Shinsuke. Unfortunately, though, Sheamus also needs to continue this run. But if you wanted to push off Shinsuke on his own, what better way than to have a feud with Sheamus? Two aggressive hard hitters in the ring, and then he can get the rub off of Sheamus in that run, and then he can keep it moving. So I think that'd be a nice direction for LA Knight. You got to keep him in that elevated mid card. Keep feuding. Keep getting. Actually, for him, the basics is he's got to win some feuds. He can't be fodder for those that are part timers or fodder for those that are, less than him right now. I think that he's over. He's got an opportunity to do a lot of great things. Vignettes, great, good work, but it comes off hollow every time he talks and talks shit. This is a good shit talker, but now you need to pair that up with wins. And this is where in the other company they say wins and losses matter. In the storyline, wins and losses matter. You can't take a guy like LA Knight seriously when he's talking all this junk and then he goes into the ring and loses. He needs a nice winning streak. And starting with that, that's where I would go. Wins in the ring for LA Knight and a feud against a brute for Shinsuke Nakamura, but I think it's his last run, maybe an opportunity for him to do what he's got to do. But again, as of late, the last 4 or 5 years, there's a long laundry list of performers that you said, man, if you could have did something different with, they could have been bigger stars than what they actually were. And you don't want that. I would never want that. And a guy like Shinsuke, you hope that the WWE run will eventually do what it's going to do for Cody, where it takes a guy that was awesome and takes him to the next level, but it hasn't happened yet.
Speaking of guys who might be on their last run, Jeff Hardy made a return on AEW television. And this was not expected. Matt Hardy recently did a podcast, and he said that Jeff had some eye surgery. He had some ligaments that had to be tightened up in his eye, basically from all the jumping and the landing. And he was looking at maybe 5 to 6 weeks out before he returns. Well, he returned this Wednesday on Dynamite, and they returned Jeff Hardy in a very familiar fashion. And I just don't understand what the thought process is here. So let me set the stage for you. You've got Matt Hardy and you've got Isaiah Cassidy in the ring, and basically they were getting beat down by the Firm. You've got Big Bill, you've got the guy who wears the tiger mask, can't remember his name off the top of my head, and you got Ethan Page, and they're just beating the crap out of them. Hook's music hits, Hook comes down to the ring, joins in, and things start to kind of turn a little bit, but then they go back the other way, and the three of them are getting beat down, only to have Jeff Hardy's music hit. He shows up with a chair at the top, he kind of does a little posing, and then he runs down to the ring to make the save. Your brother is Matt Hardy. The first person to save him should be Jeff Hardy. The guy who constantly has Jeff Hardy's back is Matt Hardy. Jeff Hardy should be the first guy to have Matt Hardy's back. Jeff Hardy should not do any posing at the top of the ramp, holding a chair, being like, yeah, I'm here, doing his little pump up the crowd thing. If you want to introduce Jeff Hardy and you want to give him a moment with the crowd, you need to have Matt introduce him and then give him his moment. Do not have Matt getting beat down in the middle of the ring again, and then have somebody else come out to make a save, and then have Jeff Hardy be the fourth guy to offset whatever the beatdown is. Also, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Hook, Isaiah Cassidy, they're all supposed to be faces, and the faces have an odd man advantage. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense that Jeff Hardy comes out, poses with a chair while his brother is getting his head stomped in, and then slides in the ring. Doesn't make sense that Jeff Hardy is not the first man out to help make the save on his brother. This is the second time they've done this, and we were critical about this the last time they did it because it looks stupid. It looks stupid again. Why does AEW not learn from its mistakes, and why do they continue to package and bring Jeff Hardy in this way?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I think they have a one-dimensional writer or a producer for Jeff Hardy, and he's like, "What's the best return? I run in and do my move."
It's so frustrating just watching it, because it doesn't make sense.
There's a lot of better ways they could do it. It was cool. It was talked about, rumored at this point in time. Unfortunately, you just have to trust that this run hopefully stays in a particular lane. And you hope that finally he can do something in AEW, because currently, when you look at AEW from a higher angle view, 10,000-foot view, a lot of the WWE guys haven't made a big impact. You have Miro, and dude's either
he's on the side of a milk carton.
Yeah, stealing. You have Matt and Jeff Hardy, and you're realizing, okay, now you realize House of Black is doing some things, but they've always had a stop and start kind of feel to them. It's been weird in that, obviously the biggest stars in Danielson and Moxley, and now Cesaro and, Claudio Castagnoli, you realize, okay, those guys are getting the shine, and they always kind of gravitate towards the top. But the other guys, you realize maybe, AEW's strategy of trying to pinch these guys is an epic failure. I find it just crazy. And to be honest, Jeff Hardy is kind of now way below mid-card status. I mean, he's basically, if you look at it in WWE rankings of shows where you have main event, Raw, and pay-per-views, Jeff Hardy's like opening match of main event. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, he's there, great, but dark matches, I don't see him being relevant at this point in time with his age. And you can only tap into the relevancy of a past performer for so long. You have to bring him to 2023, and that's their mission, is they got to make him relevant. He's got to do good promos. He's got to have good matches, and really he's got to lay off the sauce, to be point blank. He's got to be able to be available. And at this point in time, every single week that he's out of the news blotter is a successful week for AEW, because I'm sure they're paying him a hefty penny.
Yeah, no, most definitely they are. And to me, with Jeff Hardy I put in kind of the same realm as I put CM Punk. Are they really worth the headache? You know what I'm saying?
No, I would say that's totally different. CM Punk, the only reason why you keep hearing his name is there is a weird fan base that's still loyal to him. And those that are against him are, I think it's kind of like one of those things where hardcore loyalists, like the 500,000 that tune in, are definitely against his antics. But there's a bigger, broader audience that's like, what is this guy about, that has potential to make money? So we'll see, because I don't see no logical reason to even bring back CM Punk other than there's money to be made with a controversial feud. But Jeff Hardy is way, like, yes, they are headaches personality-wise, yes. Yeah. But I think,
from a business standpoint and from a company standpoint, are they worth dealing with that headache? And in this case, Tony Khan seems like he says yes to Jeff Hardy. He may be saying yes to CM Punk.
Yes.
To me, from a business standpoint, I feel like you can get more from younger talent and not have to deal with the headache, and not have to necessarily deal with any of the backlash, and not have to deal with any of the BS. Look, Jeff Hardy is a great performer, okay? He is incredible. He has done a ton of stuff, absolutely crazy stuff. All that being said, Jeff Hardy's towards the back end of his career. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many large things he can fall from. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I want him falling from anything that's large. I don't know if I want him taking any bump that is higher than a ring rope. Just because at this point in his career, at this point in his lifespan with his age, I don't know if he can handle it physically. And I don't need him to be on the shelf. That being said, I also don't know if I can trust him. Everywhere Jeff has ever gone, he has screwed up immensely with his drug and alcohol problem. And look, it's one of those things where you're constantly in recovery. Like, you're not fixed. You go through like a 12-step program, you're just not automatically better. And the life of a wrestler is hard, because most of these guys, to get through matches, they've got to be on some type of painkiller because their body's so banged up. A lot of these guys, when they're traveling from spot to spot, They drink a couple of beers, and usually a couple of beers turns into a couple of shots, and a couple of shots turns into a lot of alcohol. And these are all things that have derailed Jeff Hardy. I don't know if you're able to keep Jeff Hardy on the straight and narrow for a long period of time, much less the length of his contract. And I don't know if this is what is best for him. He feels it is. Tony Khan thinks they've got a situation worked out. We'll have to see.
Isn't it crazy?
CM Punk is...
I want to say this real fast. What do you think about after the nonsense with the Elite? What do you think about a CM Punk Jeff Hardy feud? Put them together. Put them together. Two train wrecks, and whatever happens. And I think that would be an interesting feud. And as you were talking, and sorry to cut you off, I just was thinking it's crazy because the bigger gamble is on CM Punk, but I think the more realistic, safer play would be to do something with Jeff Hardy, mentoring maybe Darby Allin or mentoring one of the other young talent as well. I don't see him ever elevating to higher talent. I think at this point, cuz it's probably, a 2-3 month thing where you elevate him and then he's got to start putting over the talent. He's got to be like a veteran that just puts basically, like a Dustin Runnels, just a dude that's there that puts over talent.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I don't know what the future is for Jeff and Matt. Maybe they've got one more run in them. Maybe I could see them in
FTR,
Cash and Dax. Yeah. Doing a great match. I could see a great match just because the styles contrast.
Put over some tag teams, sure.
I don't know long term. I don't know where they go with Jeff. And I hope for him and I hope for the company it is what is best for him and what is best for the company. I think one of the bigger segments that we had on AEW Dynamite this week, you had Blackpool Combat Club basically beating up the underlings of the Elite, only for Kenny Omega to come out from the back when the match was all over and they would not stop beating up Brandon Cutler. What did you make of this segment where Kenny Omega comes out? Kenny Omega looks fantastic again. Kenny Omega, since he's come back from injury, he has looked really, really good. But it seems like when Kenny Omega gets like a week off, he can really dial in his training, and he just comes back looking like he should be on a stage at a bodybuilding show because he looks impeccable. You had Matt and Nick Jackson. Again, this is the first time we've seen them since the reported bicep injury that took place a few weeks ago. I believe it was Matt had his bicep taped up because he's the one who suffered the injury. What did you think of this? Because I got excited for this. This right here, this is awesome. This to me, you've got one of the higher factions in Blackpool Combat Club against the faction in the Elite. And I thought the little video graphic with Don Callis' head getting busted open and it basically looking like a sideways mouth on his head. I thought that was absolutely cool that they showed that because you knew it happened, but man, it was pretty gruesome to see. I thought this was an awesome segment.
Very awesome, and it's elite. That's what's good, is that it's two high-caliber groups and factions that are very able to do what they got to do. So I'm very impressed, very happy that they have the opportunity, and the biggest question is who should go over? Because in my mind, while Nick and Matt and Kenny Omega are great, it just has the feel that the biggest stars right now, the top faction appears to be the Blackpool Combat Club. I mean, I think the Outlaw. I mean, it's really kind of interesting to match it up. Kenny Omega is bigger than Claudio, and obviously Moxley and Danielson are bigger than the Young Bucks. But overall, I think you can draw a lot more money worldwide with the Blackpool Combat Club doing some things. Now, if you're crazy, you put CM Punk with the Blackpool Combat Club. I think that would be some wild ass shit. But it's just a headache, and there's no reliability that CM Punk can last for a year because this is going to last. The Combat Club is doing an amazing opportunity as well for Wheeler Yuta. I think that being around these guys will pay dividends, maybe not this year, but in the future. You're going to have a badass dude that's just going to be a serious threat for the top of AEW. So I can't wait to see it. For me, though, here's the problem. Is you see the layout of some of the matches that AEW has had. It kind of, do you get a sense that maybe they're going like the death match kind of route where they're going to have glass busted over each other? It's going to get violent, and it's going to be a combination of spot fest and violence. And I don't think you need to see it. I think you could actually pull off a classic psychological wrestling match with these guys, and not have it be so outlandish. But I feel like they're going to try and do like introducing the first ever 4 cages, and then they're going to just do some wild ass shit and flaming this and flame. It's like, no, you don't need all that gimmick. You don't need all those gimmicks. Just have these guys be themselves, have a match, and have the Combat Club go over. It'll be great.
It really does feel like it's going to be something very ECW-esque. So it will be interesting to see what kind of match we do get. I think this is awesome, though, because you kind of needed to get the Elite away from the Trios champion picture, right? This was a great way to do it. I think Blackpool Combat Club is a faction that really is on par with them. And I think the Elite themselves are higher up the card than the House of Black. Like, I like the House of Black, and it's cool that the House of Black have the championships. Let them go do something. Let them see if they can make a run with themselves. But you needed to get the Elite, you need to get Blackpool Combat Club out of that circle, because if you want to make the House of Black more believable, they need to not be messing with those guys right now. You can have these guys having their own thing, and it's going to be absolutely incredible, and have them doing it over here on the side. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think when you start to work in Bryan Danielson, when you start working him back into it, I think that's when you bring Hangman Page back into it. And that's when you have the reuniting of what was the original Elite with Hangman Page. So I think this is going to be, there's a lot of story here. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I do think the match is going to be bloody. I do think the match is going to be violent, but I think it is going to be one hell of a ride. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
I wanted to ask you something. I wanted to ask, what did you make of the Darby Allin segment with MJF? Because my thought was, in my note, it made it, and I wanted to ask because I was very curious. It just feels, obviously, that they're using the AEW World title to kind of bring along some of the mid-card guys, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, having Sting talk about Cody. But for me, my note was, look, MJF is a star. Darby Allin is working his way up to a star. I think you need to create MJF to be a mega star by having him be in the ring with a Danielson and the likes of a Moxley, the likes of another bigger star, like Wheeler Yuta's a bigger star than Darby Allin. And I just think that, unfortunately, it shouldn't be used with the world title to move up guys. You should have it with the TV title. So I'm just a little bit perturbed. MJF, I think, is getting limited by the current run that he has with these up and coming challengers. You need to have and the problem is the TNT title is nowhere near relevant. And I will say Orange Cassidy and those that have worked in the past to elevate the North Atlantic International, or whatever title they're calling it now, the North Atlantic Championship or the International title, has started to build more credibility, but it's not where it needs to be. I'm just against MJF trying to elevate other dudes when MJF needs to be having awesome feuds. And Darby Allin's great. He'll have a good match. Sammy Guevara's great. But I think the feud that they should be having is Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin. Keep it going and tell further stories. Have a rivalry. So it's just disappointing because MJF is awesome, but it feels wasted to do it with Darby Allin.
Well, when you look at it this way, right, from a business perspective, you've got 4 guys that you basically deemed your next guys, right? Like, they are the guys who are in waiting, and that was MJF, who skyrocketed, Darby Allin, who had some quick rise, then kind of plateaued, and now I think they've kind of figured it out again. Sammy Guevara, who seems like he is everybody's right-hand man. He's not really the guy, but he's the other guy. And then Jungle Boy, who is the crowd favorite, just kind of learned to talk on the microphone. His development has been much more slow, and it's been at a slower pace. But these are the 4 guys that Tony Khan and the company have said, these guys are the future. These guys are the next wave. The only one who has really taken the ball and run with it is MJF. MJF is the only one who was able to kind of put it all together and figure it out and be able to one, work a crowd, 2, be able to get himself over, 3, be able to get other guys over, and arguably the best part, and I know Kenny doesn't agree with this, but work a match in the ring. MJF can work a freaking match in the ring. MJF's a very good wrestler. He is. I'm on the verge of saying he is a great wrestler. I think he's got a few more things he can work on, but I think he is an incredible ring general when he's in the ring working. So MJF was the first guy to really put it together, and you're right. He should be a superstar. He's got the makings, and he's got superstar plastered all over his ass cheeks. Now, the thing is, you want to bring the rest of these guys along, and the way you do it is you get them to chase. And the hope is that Sammy Guevara can kind of figure it out and figure out how to basically separate himself and not basically be Chris Jericho's number 2, because he's always Chris Jericho's number 2 guy. You can get Darby Allin, maybe get Darby Allin to kind of get out from the shadow of Sting and get him to, 1, cut a really good promo, which he did, 2, connect with the fans, which he is, and he's there now. And 3, continue to put good matches together and maybe figure out a way to put a different type of match together. A lot of Darby Allin's matches are very similar. It's almost cookie cutter. You need to work a couple more things in there. Maybe tend to stay away from the ultra violence, because a lot of his matches have a lot of violent angles in them. Whether it's a coffin match, whether it's first blood match, whether it's a tables match or a ladders match. Find a way to work a match and have it be more of a professional wrestling match instead of a gimmick match. And then for Jack Perry, he's super over. Crowd's into him. But he seems to be like the super over mid guy, right? Like he's the mid card guy that everybody's like, oh man, he's a lot of fun. But he's unrealistic as your champion. He's got to find a way to become much more realistic. So how do you do that? MJF is wrought with realism. MJF is a guy he seems like he's the realest dude in the room. Like if you walked into a room, like even when MJF isn't on TV, he is still MJF. Like he is constantly in character. He's a dick in real life because he's a dick on TV. So how do you do that? You try to get Jack Perry to kind of pull some of that. You try to get MJF to make Darby Allin have more of a realistic match. You try to get Sammy Guevara to maybe go one-on-one and stand on his own with a guy like MJF. You try to get MJF to really help elevate the bar and bring these guys up. That's what they're trying to do here. These guys right here, these guys have been crowned the next wave. These are our future. These are our guys. AEW wants to build around them. MJF is the one who really took off. And you're right, MJF can be in a class with anybody. He's got all the tools in the world. He cuts great promos. He does great work in the ring. Guy is realistic. The guy is a fantastic heel. Even when he's a heel, he can make you feel some sort of babyface way for him. Not a lot of guys can do that. He is a megastar. He's trying to help groom and make other megastars with the guys that he was put in a pool with. He was the first one to get out of the pool. The other guys are trying to figure out how to climb out, try to climb their way up the ladder. He's trying to bring that out of them. That's why you do it. I feel like you could go about it a different way, but I feel like them chasing and them pulling that storyline. Again, AEW likes to pull things that the fans are talking about. Them pulling from those storylines that the fans talk about, I think makes it work. And the hope is when all this is said and done, when MJF goes through all these trials and tribulations and he gets through Sammy Guevara and he gets through Jack Perry and he gets through Darby Allin, when it's all said and done, all of those guys have been leveled up. All of those guys have broken through whatever ceiling they have placed above themselves and are now on that next level where they're looking to get bigger, better, badder. So it'll be interesting. I like it. I think, to your point, there are different ways you could go about it, but I think this makes for an interesting story. And I think specifically for MJF, you have to now remember, MJF is fighting a three-headed battle, right? He's fighting Sammy Guevara, he's fighting Jack Perry, he's fighting Darby Allin, and all of these guys are different. All of these guys bring something different. All of these guys have a different angle. So it really shows the multifacetedness of MJF. And I think that's important. And I think that is you talk about wanting to make him a superstar. This is one way you become a superstar because you've got to be able to do battle different ways. And that's what he's doing. So I find it interesting. You obviously don't like it. Who would you prefer him fighting with right now? Would you prefer him being with Danielson in the ring, or would you prefer him being in the mix with a guy like a Kenny Omega, or maybe even challenging like a Vikingo and having a match with Vikingo for the AAA Mega Championship?
No, the heavyweights, man. Claudio, Moxley, CM Punk, the biggest stars should fight for the championship. And it's like I said, it's something where I can see obviously the pros of doing it. You're going to create great stars, but for MJF, basically box office. Would I pay if I had $100? Would I pay to see Darby Allin MJF? Not really. I'd watch it, but would I go pay my hard-earned dollars? No. I want to see main event matches, and this is coming from more of a boxing feel where you like the big fight feel, and this feels more like a creative venture to boost up talent. And I just think MJF is box office. You could do so many great things, and that's why, boom, okay, you want to do it? Right away, I think it's great. Okay, you do your thing with Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara, and the next guy is Switchblade. Right away. Bullet Club Gold, I'm back, let's do it. And I didn't even know when they said Jay White's 6'4", when Chris Jericho was like doing his salesmanship saying, look, Jay White had an opportunity to go to WWE and he chose AEW. Boom, Jay White MJF. That's money. That's something where I would pay $150 to watch at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a fantastic match. But again, you have to also remember, Jay White's been on AEW television, I think 4 times, maybe 3 times. And we got an introduction to him. We kind of know who he is. I think they did a much better job introducing him than they did with Vikingo, or maybe it's just because we're much more familiar with him. The fan base has a bit of a knowledge about him, but I think you need to have an introductory match before he gets there. He's got to come in and he's got to win something before just showing up and challenging. Do you know what I'm saying? You can't just have a geek off the street, and that's how we're going to look at him, as a geek off the street. We know he's done a lot of good work in New Japan. We know he's done a hell of a job in other places, and we know he could have went to WWE. But he's still, what is he to our company? What is he to us? Who have you gone through here? You haven't gone through anybody here. Get to the back of the line. You're brand new. That's how I look at it. I feel like that's how they look at it. And that's kind of where it needs to go. I think he needs to get through at least 1, maybe 2 matches, and then he can challenge. And look, the moment he challenges,
it's done.
That is going to be awesome. It's going to be gold. It will be Bullet Club gold for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait, man. Nice stuff.
Something I noticed on Dynamite, and I wonder if you noticed this too. The Women's Championship has been off TV for a long time. Like Jamie Hayter, I think is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Jamie Hayter. Huge fan of Britt Baker. I think they're great. I think they carry that women's division. But the Women's Championship has not been on TV. You see the TBS Championship with Jade Cargill much more. And she's having a very interesting feud with Taya Valkyrie. I feel like there actually might be some bad blood there. We'll see what happens with that as that unfolds. But what do you make of the AEW Women's Championship being off television so much? Like, Jamie Hayter comes out, but she doesn't ever always have her belt. She just recently wrestled Rio. I think that was like 2 weeks ago. And before that, I couldn't tell you the last time she had her belt on television and she was actually wrestling. And when she does come out to try to break up the little thing that we've got going on with Saraya and Ruby Soho, and she doesn't ever have her belt on her. So I find it weird that the Women's Championship is not being displayed as much. Have you noticed this, or is this just something that I noticed?
No, I noticed it, but I don't care. I'm happy. It's like less time. Yeah, women got to be put on Rampage, period. It's not relevant. You give the TV time is precious, and if it's going to go to the Saraya situation, fine. That's the way it is. But like I said, the women have done, and it's largely in part due to the company and their stance on women. 5-minute matches, no relevancy to their angles, no impact. I mean, yeah, they're doing it, but there's no impact. There's no lasting memories where you're like, oh my God, did you miss Tony Storm doing this to Saraya? It's like, okay, no, they've done the same things. So it has not been memorable. So I don't care. Like, it's not something that I miss. And I just hope that in the coming years, when they start doing, maybe bringing up more people or developing more talent, that they have more impact. Because the rosters are deep, and you can do those things with women, but you got to give them time. And you could even make it where, like, look, you're going to have the highest and best angles on Rampage and go there and see it. But Dynamite needs to be main event players. And right now, I don't see a bright future for the women's division. So it's interesting. It's there. But the matches aren't as good. The details aren't as there. And there's far more. It's like there's far more women that need, like, basically they need an NXT where they have 2 years of just consistently working in front of a crowd, promo classes, hitting the marks, and then having events. And that's what the blessing of NXT was, is that when an Indy Hartwell shows up on the main roster, she's going to shine like a diamond, and I can't wait to see it. But AEW, basically, you can't have Dynamite be your NXT, period. You just got to have it where it's the main event players. So it's unfortunate. It's basically you need your defining moment. You need a good match with these women. And let's see what they do.
Yeah, I don't think that AEW has done a fantastic job of presenting the women and building the women. I feel like there was a time period when it was like Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa. It was awesome, but it's very far from there. And really, it really felt like the women's division hinged on those two women and really only those two women. And now we're a little ways away from there. And just the storytelling hasn't been great. So we'll see where we go. For this week, I'm giving my show of the week to Dynamite. I thought Dynamite was fantastic. Again, I feel like Raw and SmackDown were both highly missable. And if you missed them, you didn't miss nothing. So it's all good with me. What was your show of the week?
Absolutely, it was Dynamite. I thought wrestling was good, flow was good, and I think that it's an opportunity now for AEW to pick up the pieces and gain some momentum, especially now that they're going to have a show at Wembley. They got some shit to sell, so let's see what they put together.
Awesome. Would you like some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
Well, we said it would happen on last week's show, and it was completed on Monday afternoon. Logan Paul had reportedly signed a new multi-year deal with WWE. The contract terms are not yet known, but it feels like it was already complete, and we just needed the Triple H sideways finger point picture. Paul said the idea with this multi-year contract was to get really creative around the story that we're telling as my professional wrestling career unfolds. Being the hyper-ambitious person that I am, I'm going for a belt. I wouldn't have signed this contract if I didn't think that I was capable of getting a WWE belt. I think it'd be the coolest thing ever. So it'll be interesting to see where Logan Paul ends up in his WWE career, but he is laying it out there. He wants a championship. Sticking with contract signings, but moving over to AEW, a wrestler has re-upped with the company. Brian Cage has been working with All Elite Wrestling without a contract after his previous deal expired following the Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor. Per Fightful Select, Cage has signed a new long-term 5-year deal to stay with AEW and Ring of Honor. The report notes that several top talents have pushed for Brian Cage to re-sign, but there was also top talents in WWE who were lining for him to end up there. WWE had some interest in the former FTW champion, but he ended up liking the offer from AEW. Cage worked with an agent throughout this process to get the deal done. And finally, some major news, and this is where we're going to end our program because I want to have a bit of a discussion about this with you. Again, major news from AEW. It seems as though CM Punk will be making a return. It has recently been reported that AEW are preparing for Punk's return, with a June 21st being seen as the date as the AEW returns to Chicago. However, backstage issues and heat with him are far from being cleared up. What is a promotion to do? Well, how do you feel about splitting up your talents? Like a draft, but instead of a red or blue show, we have a Wednesday and a Saturday show. According to Dave Meltzer, who has provided further details or feelings backstage in AEW, writing in the Current Wrestling Observer newsletter, as reported here in the past 2 weeks, a Punk return is largely expected. It's a tremendous situation because the dressing room issues involving him have not been settled at the time of press release. The working idea was that the Saturday show would star Punk and that they would split crews to a large degree. History does show that splitting crews never last long, but in this case, the idea is to ease the dressing room problems in the sense that those who have not been made up would be kept on different crews and wouldn't have to interact with each other. We're not sure if it's TBS or TNT, but if it's TNT, there will be a lot of sports preemptations, and if TBS is there, if TBS there will be some. It also means if it goes head-to-head with major sports almost every week, including UFC most weeks, UFC pay-per-view shows, 12 to 13 times a year, college football, all fall, almost every major boxing show, every major sport at one time or another, and WWE pay-per-view shows nearly every month since WWE is trying to move its major events from Sundays to Saturdays as much as possible. I honestly am not sure how this is going to work long-term and if the headache is worth it. That being said, there is reported that there will be a meeting planned between Chris Jericho and CM Punk to see if the two can work together on a possibility of working together. Feels like this would be necessary. This would be a necessary step going forward with all of Punk's matches because he's burned so many bridges. Look, there's a lot to unpack here, right? There's a lot to kind of pull out. One, you've got AEW doing a Saturday show, which I don't know if we need another show. I'm not sure if Rampage is going to go away, but if you add a third show in, your second show is failing. It is dying. You do a bad job presenting that show. If you feel like CM Punk is going to salvage that second, possibly third show, okay, I'm listening. But that being said, again, I don't know if CM Punk is worth the headache. You already have to have CM Punk have a conversation with a guy like Chris Jericho to see if they're willing to work together. You basically have to do this with the majority of the talent in the back. The majority of the talent in the back do not like CM Punk, feel some sort of way about CM Punk after what happened at All Out. You, of course, have the Elite, and the Elite do not want CM Punk back. They do not want to deal with him. They don't want to have to go through this. And look, it's not just like these guys had a disagreement. CM Punk went very rogue and, for the most part, undressed and embarrassed the owner of this company. On top of all of that, you had CM Punk then start a fight with the guys in the back, and then that got drug out, and then you heard multiple tales about how that unfolded. And let's be honest, CM Punk is a little bit of an older guy. Every run CM Punk has had in AEW so far has ended with some sort of injury, whether it's a foot injury, whether it's a tricep injury. He's always banged up, and he's not even wrestling like he wrestled when he was in WWE. I don't know if it's worth it to bring CM Punk in. I don't know if I like splitting up crews. I don't think AEW needs a third show. They definitely don't need a third show. I don't know if putting it on Saturday is any better. What are your thoughts on bringing CM Punk in, splitting everybody up so you have a little bit more harmony, and then look, you've talked about the Elite and CM Punk working that towards a payday. Well, the Elite don't want to work with him. So if the payday's not there, is it even worth bringing this guy back? Because I don't think so.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's worth bringing him back. I think it's a great idea. Separate a little bit and AEW Saturday night, baby. I think it's great that the talk is there. The problem is that we need to find a way to guarantee his success. And obviously, there has to be some parameters in regards to...
he gets in his own way regularly.
Yes, that's
like
what I'm
they put
saying.
the belts on him.
And
they put the belt on him,
exactly.
And then this guy goes and he loses his mind in a press conference and just dumps a whole bunch of backstage stuff in the media. Like I don't think you need to do that. Like he gets in his own way, dude.
No, exactly. That's where maybe a faction comes in, something where he can mentor somebody that he believes in, and that's why maybe it's FTR and CM Punk. I mean, for whatever reason, I'm not sure. I know the friendship and loyalty and all that kind of stuff. But it is very weird that FTR has this definitely man crush on CM Punk. They just, for
Dax slobs on his knob hard.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, they just have this thing. So I'm down for it. If they can do it, and if you're hearing the reports of a long-term contract with FTR, then you got to do it. You have a faction, and you can do some things that can potentially be awesome. Maybe you have FTR, CM Punk, and a big, tall Scottish dude that may be unhappy with whatever is going on in his contract at another major promotion. You got to do something that is going to be long-lasting. But, yeah, I think the odds are that it's not going to be successful. But you got to try because the man draws money. And I'm interested to see how it plays out. But, yeah, it's a risk. It's a gamble. But you got to do it, especially when you got a big Wembley show coming up because he'll sell tickets.
Speaking of FTR announced that they signed 4-year deals, and they plan to retire after the end of this AEW run. So they're there for a while. I do have one more note. I thought we were going to end it with CM Punk. We've got one more note. WWE has changed the pay-per-view name. It is no longer the King and Queen of the Ring. Rather, it is called Night of Champions. This show will still take place in the Jeddah Superdome on Saturday, May 27th. According to the report, the change is a creative choice to revive the Night of Champions name and bring it into an international market. There's no word yet on what this means for the status of the King and Queen of the Ring tournament that obviously would have culminated at this event. Night of Champions historically had its own unique concept. It was around from 2007 to around 2015, which was that every main roster champion would have to defend their title on the show, similar to like a battle of the belts, but every championship was defended, like even the important ones, whereas Battle of the Belts, it's all the lower mid-card ones. Issues, however, may arise as Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens don't generally go to Saudi Arabia. Sami Zayn is Syrian and does not want to go to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has asked that he not be present. So it'll be interesting what you do with your undisputed tag team champs if they're not at a show where all of the champions are supposed to be there. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes. A lot to watch on the CM Punk front. We will keep our eyes glued to all of that, and we will keep you updated with anything that comes our way. But that's it for this week.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We love breaking down the world of professional wrestling. It's wild. It's crazy. So much going on. It's going to be a great time heading into WrestleMania Backlash and a lot of the angles setting up for the summer. AEW now trying to pick up the pieces after WWE had a successful WrestleMania season, and AEW is trying to make their push as they try to build buzz and generate interest for a big Wembley show. So it's a good time now for the world of professional wrestling, and I can't wait to follow along with my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. So make sure you tune in anywhere that you listen to your favorite audio content. Make sure you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will easily find you. Podcasting time is now over. Can't wait to fire it up next week on the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.